Way back in 2011, Steph Curry, as well as the Golden State Warriors, were in a drastically different situation than the one they're in right now. First off, Monte Ellis was the one taking the majority of the shots, as he was putting up over 20 points pretty consistently at that time. David Lee, the power forward, whose stock was way higher than it is right now as he's coming off the bench for the San Antonio Spurs. And Curry was early on in his career, but he was definitely showing flashes of a guy who could be at least a very good player. I don't know if anyone expected him to raise to the heights he's at now, but his shooting and overall efficiency made an impact right away in the NBA, and so early on in his career, the Warriors agreed to keep him for a 4-year contract worth about $44 million that will be completed at the end of this season. But then some things happened for these guys, one of which is they made an emphasis for defense and rebounding and toughness when they traded away Monte Ellis for Andrew Bogut. They also chose Steph Curry over Monte Ellis with that move, thinking that he could just be a guy who could lead them to more victories, and they were definitely right on that one. The drafting of Klay Thompson would be the foundation of the best shooting team of all time, as well as, now with Klay as well as Bogut, a real team that could be something on the defensive side of the floor. And then as we all know, David Lee would get injured, Draymond Green shows up, and the Golden State Warriors are born not too many years later. And when I say born, I mean, the team as we know of them now. Andre Iguodala deserves a lot of credit for this one as well. But amongst all of this happening, Steph Curry went to another level of player. And now, if you look at where he is in his contract of only $12 million a season, I mean, he's one of the best players in the NBA. That contract allowed them to actually go out and get Kevin Durant. Now this upcoming free agency, Steph Curry is going to be making over $30 million a season, but for right now, he is one of the most underpaid players the NBA has ever seen. And now we move on to Kemba Walker. And in the 2014 season, Kemba was not that good. His production wasn't bad, but he was one of the most inefficient players in the NBA. I mean, 39% from the field, 33% from three. You can make the argument the best player on the team at that time was Al Jefferson for what he was able to do for them in the low post. He was their big-time scorer, and he was perhaps the driving force of why the Bobcats were able to win about 43 games. And while Kemba, from a sheer production standpoint, 18 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, not the worst in the world, and you could see that the guy had some talent. And he would definitely have some flashes of, knowing something is there. But for the most part, it just seemed like a guy who the shooting was just never really going to be there for Kemba. But even with that, right before the 2015 season started, the Bobcats at that time would give him a contract of $12 million a season. And then the very next year, when they became the Charlotte Hornets, he still wasn't that good. The inefficiency was still there, and I don't know if many people would have considered Kemba to be a starting point guard who could actually lead you to some wins. But that Hornets team had a load of problems. Lance Stevenson asked to play off-ball. He was not a fan of that whatsoever, as he was one of the worst players in the league that season. But then going into 2016, there was some roster turnover, Nicholas Batum being a key addition. But then, Kemba, his efficiency really started to improve to the point where he could be a productive player and be a leader of an offense and not just be a detriment to everyone around him. His three-point shooting improved, and then this season, he was the Hornets' only source of real offense. And if it wasn't for the Isaiah Thomases and Kyle Lowrys of the world, he probably would have made the All-Star game in the Eastern Conference. So Kemba's improvement has been huge, and now at only $12 million a season and the improvement he's made and how he carries the Hornets, he's got one of the best contracts in the NBA, and there's still a few years left. Eric Bledsoe also has a few years left on his deal as well. His story, take it back to 2014, where he and Goran Dragic surprised a lot of people with how they led the Phoenix Suns To be fair, Bledsoe played about half the season, so a lot of credit goes to Dragic, but nonetheless, when Bledsoe was in there, he showed himself to be a really quality two-way point guard for them, and so as a result, after that season, they would agree to sign him on for about $14 million a year, because at that time, it was a pretty appropriate contract for Bledsoe. But then the season after, there was a whole lot of controversy. The Phoenix Suns decided to sign 3 point guards. Isaiah Thomas would end up on the Boston Celtics. We're going to be talking about him in this video as well. And then the other point guard of the crew, Dragic, he was moved to Miami for 2 first-round picks because Phoenix realized, well, we kind of screwed up with the 3 point guard thing. And now Eric Bledsoe, if he was on the open market today, he would make over $20 million a season. Only at 14 for the Phoenix Suns. And because of that, he gives this young team and this organization some options in terms of just moves that they can make, because he's not swamping them in terms of salary. His contract is also very tradable if a team looking for an instant upgrade at that position would want him, and Phoenix, given, like I said, how young they are, they might be inclined. And we just mentioned him, so we'll talk about it now. Isaiah Thomas established himself as a pretty legit player for the Sacramento Kings, putting up 20 points, 6 assists, and given that Sacramento had so many guys who wanted to shoot with him and DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay, it was still pretty impressive overall. Sacramento decided that he just wasn't going to fit with what they had going on, so the Phoenix Suns signed Isaiah. It's actually a sign and trade where he would be paid $27 million over 4 years, which is about $7 to $6 million a season, which at one time kind of made sense. I mean, it was a sign and trade between the Suns and the Kings. They wanted him to be their 6th man. And then, of course, we all know what the hell happened. Goran Dragic said, "The hell is this crap? I want the ball in my hands like I had last season." Phoenix decided that Eric Bledsoe was the only one they really wanted to keep, traded away Isaiah Thomas to the Boston Celtics for Marcus Thornton and a first-round pick. And this previous season, Isaiah had, one of the better years in the NBA by anybody, putting up nearly 30 points a game, carrying the Celtics offense, being incredible in fourth quarters, and he was getting paid $6 million a season. He's the reason why the Celtics have a chance at Gordon Hayward. I mean, if he was making even $5 or $6 million more than he is right now, they wouldn't even be entertaining the idea. Pretty damn ridiculous, his salary compared to his output on the floor. And then finally, we're going to talk about Kyle Lowry. And you may notice that he is wearing a Knicks jersey here. That's because in the 2013/2014 season, Lowry was very close to being a member of the Knicks, and according to 2K, stealing Carmelo Anthony's number 7. In December of 2013, Knicks owner James Dolan did not have the guts to pull the trigger on a move that would send basically Iman Shumpert and a first-round pick to the Raptors in exchange for Lowry. And that means he remained a member of the Toronto Raptors, where he went to the next level with his game in 2014. His scoring, as well as his three-point percentages, became real weapons for him. And Toronto, recognizing that they had a quality guy at the age of 27 years old, signed him to a multi-year deal at only $12 million a season. I say only because that's not much money nowadays given the cap spike. And it's safe to say that Lowry, after this season, for what he's done for Toronto, becoming an awesome two-way player and one of the better point guards in the NBA, is going to get a crap ton of money this season by them. 20 plus million, perhaps he'll be approaching 30 million at the max. But as for right now, he's still only getting paid about $12 million for the output that he has been giving the Toronto Raptors.